ready, don't
I
you?
think so.
Okay.
You better get your reading materials.
I'm ready.
First of all, listening to my bio, it's fairly apparent that I can't hold a job for very long. Secondly, I've been kind of busy the last couple of weeks, and so this morning I got up and my calendar it said, read the professional development seminar notes that Scotty sent. So I opened it up and I read it and immediately called Scotty and was like, can I get out of doing this? I don't really know if giving this talk after real stories, real experience, what would that be, 5 times 40, a couple hundred years of experience. I don't know what I have to really add to it, but I hope that instead of being redundant, it somewhat, kind of brings up some of the points that everybody's talked about. And as we go through it, definitely feel free to contribute. I started thinking about this idea of work and play and the fine line between, work and play or having fun at work. When I was about 24, I had a job as a rock scaler. Has anybody in here scaled rocks along highways or hung nets or anything like that? Somebody has to. Come on. Anyway, I got a job doing that, and it's really fun. And so we're in the Snake River Canyon, outside of Jackson, between Jackson and the reservoir there. And my whole job was to hike up this hill with some ropes and a crowbar, and then pound in these steel posts, tie a rope to it, rappel down, and if there was any loose rocks on the road cut, jimmy them loose and watch these things trundle down into the river. And so we had to look out for the rafters, and when there was a spot between rafters, we'd get a break rocks off. And it was pretty awesome, kind of unbelievable that they paid us to do it. And so like the 4th or 5th day on this job, we started doing this thing where, at some point you'd run out of space on your rope because you'd be, 50 or 60 feet down onto this cliff. You'd run out of space and you'd have to jumar back up and move your posts and wrap back down and do it again. And so we started swinging. And we'd swing over and grab onto something and pry it off. And that turned into a really fun game. And maybe my 3rd big pendulum, it was like the hand of God kind of came down and thumped me in the nose, and I remember stopping and thinking, holy shit, this is insane. I'm on one rope, it's on this scabby cliff, it's dragging across it, and nobody's going to tell me to stop. This is all on me. And it was one of those, didn't get hurt, nothing happened, but it was still an incredibly profound experience. It was the first time in my life probably that I realized that it was all on me, So that's when I first started thinking about this stuff. And since then, I've tried to do everything I could to have jobs that were fun. And I just keep running into these examples and realizing I'm my own worst enemy. So I start looking into this stuff and thinking, I've been talking to Scotty and Ethan Green for a long time about coming up with a talk like this, and start doing this internet Google search, because Google can tell you everything, right? And so I'm like, somebody's got to have written something about getting in trouble at work, getting hurt at work because you're having too much fun. And I can't find anything in a couple hours of research, but what I find is that in fact the opposite is true. So many people have terrible jobs that there's a whole consulting industry around fungineering and gamification, they call it. So they hire these people to come in and make some of these crappy jobs fun. And I thought that was pretty crazy, I was like, wow. And to make it even weirder, it turns out that it's almost impossible to make a crappy job fun. And if these people, usually it's like these telework or telemarketing jobs, or these jobs where you sit there and push a button all day. So they'll throw games, into it, and they'll make a game out of who can hit them with the button the most times, and if you do, you get a milkshake or something like that. And instead of working, it actually, it's like coercion. People freak out, revolt. They don't want to have fun at their dumb job. They just want to do their dumb job and go home and have fun doing something else. So anyway, I got sidetracked for several hours looking at that. This is an example of fun at work and or work and play. And I stole this video from Carl Berkman. He uses it for a totally different application, but I think it applies. For those of you that have seen it, you'll probably enjoy seeing it again. And for those of you that haven't seen it, enjoy it. Ready? I'm ready. His hammer. So, what gives? Why do we do stuff like that? It's not just because they're dumb. There's 4 people there. Out of 4 people, there's got to be a couple smart ones. You know, maybe smarter than us. They still did it.
For the excitement.
For the excitement. It's kind of fun. Maybe.
Pretty close.
Does anybody, you know, does that ring a bell for any? I mean, I hope none of you guys have dropped a silo with a sledgehammer. You know, kind of sometimes you guys, probably a lot of you in here have gone and kind of poked the beast every now and then. You know, and when you think back on it, why do you go and poke the beast? Why do you tickle it? It's interesting. It's fun. It's exciting. We've got another example. This is more just a case, I don't know what you'd call it, scenario. Scotty was there, so I'm going to let Scotty tag team it for me and read Spence's story. Anybody in here knows Randy Spence, they know he's quite a character. A lot of that guy's done a lot of ski patrolling, and he was my boss for a while, and he was Scotty's boss and co-worker.
Yeah, well,
for a while, and what a guy.
quite a guy, yeah, this character. So I went to Dakota Territory expecting to get a large avalanche, so I shouldn't have been surprised to trigger a large avalanche. I was surprised to be caught in a large avalanche. Famous Randy Spence quote. So where this happened is back at Big Sky when I was working there. It's a little funny angle picture taken from Yellowstone Club, but this is the ski area boundary, effectively. We have Liberty Bowl over on this side, and then what we call the Dakota Territories, and then this is Hanging Valley out in here. So on this particular day, it was February 22nd, so late February, and we had a few day storm with some good loading winds, you know, that kind of magic 25 to 40, something like that, so moving a lot of snow. And the storm kind of ended the day before, and then we had everyone come in to do kind of cleanup work on the day that this really close call happened. So it was a nice sunny bluebird day when it happened, and there were kind of the way Big Sky set up. They're divided into 3 areas, so there were 3 of us that were forecasters, were each is responsible for one particular area. And Randy was going to take a couple of rookie blasters out there. So newer folks, we have at Big Sky, and they still do, they have a policy where you have to do 20 supervised shots before you're signed off to be a blaster. So we go out there to places like this that were on Forest Service land, but outside the open boundary, and it's a great shot where you can safely be on a ridge and dangle shots or throw them in there just to get some experience throwing shots in a not real live fire kind of scenario. So he was headed out there with 2 new folks, and then Mike and I, the other 2, we were just sitting up in the top shack up on the summit and having some less experienced folks just go through the routes. It was a great day, no pressure, you're in there early with not a whole lot to do. So a good way to get experience for newer folks. So we were sitting up in the top shack, and Randy heads out, and everyone's just, it's going to be another great day of powder skiing, a little bit of cleanup work to do, not a whole lot going on. The wind had died down, so everyone's in a really good mood. And Randy heads out. I still remember it vividly. He's just really excited, wearing his sunglasses. It's kind of a nice, cool February morning. Got a lollipop in his mouth, just king of the world. Headed out to go to a beautiful place where he thought he might be able to trigger a big slide out in here with some new patrollers. So it's going to be a great day. So I'll read Randy's story here. He wrote it up on what used to be the electronic patrol shack, so a place where kind of a pseudo InfoX for the U.S. avalanche industry. So he wrote a really good tale here. Where to begin this twisted tale of error and redemption, stupidity and survival? At the beginning, I guess. I went to Dakota Territory expecting to get a large avalanche, so I shouldn't have been surprised to trigger a large avalanche. I was surprised to be caught in a large avalanche. So February 2000 began with a wetter west flow, and we began to accumulate a more average base in our mid-mountain snow plot. On the upper mountain, wind patterns began adding feet of snow to areas when mid-mountain recorded inches. Temperatures varied from mild to downright Arctic. Winds were favorable, the loading along upper elevation ridges facing east and southeast. While doing routes on the 21st, so that's the day before, I had a good look at the Dakota Territory Hanging Valley starting zones. They looked fatter than usual and contained the debris of a natural that ran to mid-track and stopped. The avalanche activity on the 21st was very active soft slabs that were easily released by ski cutting. Most slabs were 6 to 10 inches in depth and propagated long distances. Thursday, February 22nd, the skies were broken, winds fairly calm, and air temps mild with 15 degrees Fahrenheit at 10,500 feet. Due to the increasing violation of boundaries we've been experiencing as the season grows shorter, I decided to control Dakota Territory and Hanging Valley. With one of our other certified blasters and a blaster in training, we left the summit station at about 8:20. We were carrying 7 hand charges. When we reached the point where the ridge system swings to the south and Dakota Territory changes aspect from south to east to southeast, the pillows became a more solid line of snow. This accumulation extended downhill about 100 feet and eventually petered out to rock and glazed sun crust. So he's talking about this area here, getting out the ridge and kind of in this area. The slabs were 6 to 8 inches at first and quickly became deeper, reaching 10 to 14 inches. They would release up to 15 to 30 feet in front of my cuts at the ridge line and ride up about 50 feet downhill from me. As the aspect swung back to east-southeast, I began a cut in a deeper portion of the pillow. This is where I effed up. So he got right here. So he was out in this area, coming along the ridge, just happy as can be. I can just picture him smiling, having a blast, cutting these little blobs, these little pillows that were going down a little bit and not doing a whole heck of a lot. Okay, I failed to notice the snow below me was more continuous and it lost the glazed appearance. It was wind-loaded, lee slope with a good deal more snow than what we've been dealing with. The pillow here is not usually as large as the day in question, and we normally took a much more conservative inside line across to the rocks. So usually we'd be, up on top of here where he was right about where this person's standing when he triggered this thing. I began to make my next cut. As I was about 10 feet into the cut, the slope began to release below me and slightly above me. I wasn't alarmed until I heard a loud rumble or growl or whatever. I dropped about 4 feet and looked uphill in time to see the slab had pulled out about 30 feet back from the edge of the hill on what looked like about a 20-degree slope after the pillow was removed by the slide. The bed surface measured out at 35 degrees. I was pretty sure that I was royally screwed. Blocks uphill took my feet out from under me. I found myself laying on my right side with both skis still on. So he was up in this rock pile over here, roughly looking down at that. I was accelerating downhill and being pushed by snow above me. I didn't feel in danger of being buried and was more concerned about hitting something. I dug into the bed surface with my skis and was able to track to the right. I thought that the right side was a potential route over cliffs and probably into the deeper part of the slab. I was able to roll over to my left and point my skis at a 45-degree angle and dig in again and began tracking to the left. The debris flow was angling to the skier's right, and it was hard to make headway. At that point, my right ski released, and a second later, my left ski released. I rolled back onto my back and dug in with both boot heels and pushed my backpack into the bed surface in an effort to protect my spine and buttocks. I was still going pretty fast. I felt out of control, but wasn't real frightened. I hit the bottom a couple times and also saw some rather large rocks traveling alongside me. I began to slow down and was expecting another pulse of snow from above. I prepared to try to keep from being buried. The pulse never came. Most of the debris had already passed me and continued well below into the runout. I waited for the radio frenzy to subside, because when this was going on, Mike and I are up at the top and just hear this, Randy's taking a ride! Just, you have a rookie and another person who hadn't been around for that long who were out there with them, and they were really excited. You can imagine. I called my partners to let them know I was okay. I walked off to the side. My partners shot the hanging snow that threatened their descent. Shot had no results. They descended to my level and began looking for my gear. At this time, both ski poles and one ski had been recovered. So he stopped about right here. This is looking at it from the trigger point. He went back here. There's that tree that's in the next slide is above him, which somehow he didn't hit it, and then stopped kind of right down here, which that's Randy's tree, if you're ever skiing in Big Sky. So he took this ride, triggered this thing that basically triggered 2 paths, about 1,000 feet wide, like 10 acres of debris. This side probably would have been, I don't know how you could have survived. There are all kinds of little stunted white barks in there, just really ugly stringers. Would have been really bad. That side, I don't know, it would have been that much better, but would have been better to go down that way if you're going to go the whole way on either side. So, incredibly fortunate that nothing happened. And it was really interesting talking to Randy afterwards. So we were up in the top shack there up on the summit, and Mike, when he hears that going on the radio, he looks at me and he's like, how the F did that happen? And I was thinking the exact same things. He's going out there to do some blaster training, staying on a ridge, just, nice sunny day. And Randy said, the same thing, that's what he was thinking right after he got caught. That's the first thing that crossed his mind was, how the F did that happen? So, some more stuff from Randy here, the inevitable questions. What did I do wrong? Well, for one thing, I got caught. People aren't supposed to take rides like the one I experienced, professional snow safety. Yeah, he took about 1,000-foot ride. The debris went about, the full slide was about 1,700 vert, but he only took 1,000 feet of it. Still a long ride. Professional snow safety folks take some risks and the odds add up. Make enough ski cuts in your career and you may end up on your side accelerating down some slope, wondering exactly how you ended up in this situation. It was a tough one. I was a touch too complacent that day and allowed the fun of ski cutting slabs to get the better of me and sucker me into a cut that would have been better served with a shot. I also lost sight of the intent of the day's exercise. We were going to our intended area to do hazard mitigation and explosives training. I got tunnel vision and failed to realize that we had reached the point in the route where it was time to begin blasting. Finally, I missed the fact that a topographic feature that was familiar to me was looking way different, and it was time to ask what exactly was different and how should this change my decision making. When things had gone to hell, what did I do right? In 17 years, I've been caught one other time in a slide that could have been as bad as this one. I was able to keep calm and ski out to one side of the debris. Had I chosen to try and exit the other direction, I would not have made it, and the consequences would have been bad, real bad. Keeping calm and choosing the correct options is a matter of luck and experience. What's that luck thing again? And that was lucky. By recognizing that the left side of the debris flow offered a chance of safety, I was able to slow my descent and allow most of the debris to pass by. By being caught high in the starting zone, I was in a position to avoid a burial. The greatest dangers due to being caught while high in the path in this incident were trauma from hitting a few obstacles in the track and run out, from being hit by talus that was in the debris flow, and from tumbling down the slope or sliding. If I'd been caught low in the starting zone or somewhere in the track, the outcome could have been much worse. The debris flows strained through many small pine trees and piled up in some places 10 to 12 feet deep. I was able to keep my feet downhill the entire ride and credit some of this to failed attempts at rowing my kayak in the subsequent swims in violent big water rapids. I also remembered Tom Kimbrough in a video talking about the importance of fighting like hell and keeping your backpack on to protect your spine and body. So that's looking from down at the bottom on the one side, just above all the strainers and kind of in the middle. So he got caught right up there, ended up kind of down here. He traveled through this rock rib most of the way and managed to stay out of the main flow of that, which wouldn't have been good, and ended up kind of down in there, roughly. So Simon, back to you.
Back to our question, Mark. But kind of going through Randy's, write-up, he talks about complacency, talks about tunnel vision, talks about kind of losing track of his intent or like what he was out there to do. Talks about missing information, all these things that we all think about, all the mistakes we've ever made in our life. You can find one of these categories or something like it to shove in there, right? The other thing he mentioned, and one of the reasons we used it, is he mentioned that he was just plain having fun. And I guess at least for my personality and my life so far, I noticed that, I think these type of things like complacency or lack of intent or loss of intent or something else, it's a lot easier to get there if you're having fun, because you start thinking about the fun. So when you're doing that and doing that, it turns out, this is all backed up by pretty good science, it turns out we're not very rational, purely emotional, we're in the moment. It's why we like it. So basically, at the end of the day, the stronger our emotional response to anything, the more that emotional response impacts our behavior, be it good or bad. So we get to this risk versus reward thing, and isn't that awesome? Can you imagine that thing jumping on the pelican? The cat's just sitting there thinking about it, and risk versus reward is kind of a buzzword. You hear it talked about a lot, and it's a very compelling idea. It turns out it might be better for, it applies to what we do, or it applies to skiing or climbing or any type of adventure. But it's actually almost better at explaining, financial markets or the way that people act, gambling. And I've always kind of had trouble in terms of like my job or my fun, because I've read stuff and I've watched presentations that talk about risk, and we all talk about risk, and we have to learn how to manage our risk or mitigate our risk or optimize our risk. But at some point, I kind of was thinking about it, it's like the word risk just doesn't, I guess it doesn't scare me. I don't know. Does the word risk scare anybody in here? or does it necessarily engender a negative thing in your mind? Does it make you feel uncomfortable when you hear the word risk?
I think it makes me think I want to pay attention.
You want to pay attention. It's something that, yeah, it gets your antenna up. At ISSW, but I think there's probably people doing these jobs, my guess is, are not necessarily risk adverse. They may be very conservative, they may be very careful, but they're still willing to put themselves in a potentially risky situation. So I've kind of been thinking about this in the back of my head and hadn't really made any headway with it. And then at ISSW, this economist from New Mexico gave this presentation. Some of you may have seen it, but all of a sudden he started saying, this whole risk thing, he said, it's funny, he's like, my antenna went up because this whole risk thing, I've always had a problem with it. And instead, so I was thinking about a word that maybe might be better. And so I was thinking about something like loss instead of risk. And so, maybe in this situation, if we change these words to desire and loss, or something like it, I just loved it. And it's one of those things I found and I drew in a file and I forgot where I got it, so I stole it from a biking magazine of some sort online. But anyway, I just thought it was brilliant. But when you compare it to, or when you think about it in terms of our jobs, this makes sense in terms of maybe a bike race or something. But in terms of work, and I don't know if the winners at work necessarily are increasing their risk or potential for loss with their reward or the desire that they have. I almost think at work, these are the winners here. When you get that high reward with very little potential for loss or risk. Just a thought. And that might be right on. That's a terrible thing, but it's funny. So we get back to work versus play and the fine line between it. And this isn't profound. This is something that, in my mind, just trying to put things into a framework. We have these four things, and these are themes that have come up in all the previous talks tonight in some form or fashion. But so, we have our responsibilities, we have the experience, our life experience, we have our ability to make decisions, good and bad, and we have the relationships that we exist and work within. And somehow, we have to balance, or we pull off of all four of those things in order to manage this fine line, have these fun jobs, and make it home at night. So, in terms of responsibility, there's really three levels of responsibility. Individual responsibility, to yourself, your family. Operational responsibility, so like at the Avalanche Center, you got a job to do, you go out and you do that job. You don't want to do anything that jeopardizes the Avalanche Center or the operation. And then professional or this is group as a whole. So like avalanche centers within the United States or avalanche forecasters within the United States. If we have an accident here at the Avalanche Center and somebody gets hurt really badly or dies, that's going to affect everyone in a similar operation in the United States. So move down to experience. This is like, what is experience? I think this was touched on a couple times, and something that was really cool about, at least three of the earlier presentations is people talked about this feedback value, or the value of, your profound experiences and how one experience can shape you. And many experiences with feedback can shape you. A lot of experiences without feedback, without that, that positive reinforcement or negative reinforcement, what are those experiences worth? And I think we've all had those years at this point where, like Kirk said, last year was one of them. I learned a hell of a lot last year. I made some mistakes last year forecasting around here, but I learned a lot. and it was incredibly valuable. You know, this year, it's not that you can't learn things on a year like this year, but it's just not the same. So, Colin Zacharias, I watched him talk once, and you know, sum total of profound experiences in terrain. And I think when I really think about it, it's not just in terrain; it's the sum total of your profound experiences in your life. You know, it's not just about snow and avalanches, is it? It's about the things that you've seen and your ability then to, you know, take the what ifs and apply it to your situation. And so, I think the point I'm trying to make is experiences aren't just about how many avalanches you've seen. It's like all the dumb stuff or good stuff you've done in your life and how that adds up, and then how you can take that experience and apply it to your job. So, down to decisions. How do you know if a decision's a good one? Somebody.
You make it back.
You make it back. So if you ski the north face of, you know, La La Land Peak, and it doesn't slide, and you make it home, was that a good decision? Not necessarily. It's harder than that, isn't it? But I think, at least myself, you know, there were a couple years that I was pretty convinced that that was the case, you know. Oh, got away with that one on top of this game, right? Not necessarily true. So the question becomes, you know, how do you know, but then, you know, can we develop really good decision-making capabilities without having these close calls or these profound experiences? What do you guys think?
You're always going to have risk.
Yep. You think you can, so like if nothing bad ever happens to you in avalanche terrain, or if you never see big events, can you still develop good decision making? I think you can. Yeah. I think it probably takes the right personality and diligence and imagination. But I think we can. I think that's what's so valuable about these kind of, you know, the 4 to 5 talks we saw before this one. Like that's stuff, if we allow it to, if we let it sink in, that can, it's probably not going to be as profound or as powerful as it was for these guys. We can damn sure learn for it. That's the whole point, right? So, relationships. This is a no-brainer, but man, is it important, you know, who we work with, who we live with, who we travel with. I mean, it's who we are, right? We act different around different people. And that's why I've always thought guiding was such an incredibly interesting and, you know, maybe hard profession that I wasn't attracted to, because I just can't get along with everybody. And but I think the take home is that, you know, in our relationships with our coworkers, our partners, you know, if we get to this point where we realize that we're really trying to communicate, things aren't going right, it's that same old tenet, the type of communication that will evoke those strong emotional responses, you know, that's going to influence your partner's behavior or your own behavior. So like talking in platitudes or talking around the issue, you're never going to get anywhere, right? Like you got to get to the guts of it, and you got to get to those emotions and talk about what really matters. So, how do you manage fun? I'm not sure, but I do know that within our jobs we have to define, we have to internalize our responsibilities. We really have to understand, you know, why we're there on a given day. And it's not a static thing, is it? Our jobs change. We have different responsibilities depending on the risk, right? Or your potential for loss. We need to get more experience, all of us, but we need to try, if we can, and get good experience, the kind that has feedback. Something else that's come up a lot tonight is mentorship. I don't think any of us go anywhere if we don't have good mentors. You know, we got to think about what we do, critically think about it. It's pretty easy to get caught up in thinking that you're thinking, but taking that moment to kind of slow down, think about it, make sure you're, double check, set up some traps in your mind for yourself, figure out what your pitfalls are. My pitfall is not necessarily skiing powder in dangerous situations. It's like wanting to figure out what's going on with the snow, so I'll keep going, looking at it, poking it, kicking it, want to go dig a pit on the other side of the hill. Curiosity killed the cat. That's my pitfall. So I try and build little traps in my mind and catch myself. And understand your partners and figure out what makes them tick and what their pitfalls are, and don't be afraid to talk to them about it, even though it's incredibly uncomfortable and kind of sucks. And that's all I have. Thanks. There's a picture of Doug waving goodbye.